Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the White Coat Club. I'm Nicole, and I have Amanda here with me, who is a fellow counselor at Moon Prep. Today, we are continuing with our essay mini series, and we're going to be talking about the failure or weakness challenge essay. So we'll dive into kind of strategies, things to avoid, things that are great. So yeah, hey Amanda, how is it going?
Hi, good. How are you?
Good.
Good.
So I am in the depths of writing this for a specific school right now, which I'm pretty sure you're probably doing the same.
Yes.
Um, and that prompt specifically is tell us about a time where you were unsuccessful and how you grew from experience. But there are tons that are worded pretty similarly for lots of different schools. Um, what are some of the others that you're currently working on with your kids?
Yeah, I actually have one. There's a question that's like the lessons we encounter could be fundamental to later success, a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure, how it affected you, and what you learned from the experience. And then there's another challenge one from A&M. I remember applying to A&M and I had to answer this one. Tell us a story, like what unique opportunities or challenges have you experienced throughout your high school career and how it shaped you, who you are today.
Yep, yep. So some kids choose to write about it in the prompt for the personal statement, or it's just the school itself has an essay that's asking you about a challenge. So there's absolutely some things to avoid, things to do in terms of structure. So what are some topics to avoid in terms of struggles that they're talking about?
Yeah, I would say
This
the
list could be
first.
long, probably, but what are your top?
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna say, probably a non-high school challenge. If something truly like maybe affected you like early in childhood, absolutely understand that, honoring it. But when it comes to the question that they are asking, maybe avoiding something that did not happen in high school. Not winning a sports game. If I could write about that, I would. I lost every sports game. But that's like an inevitable thing. Like it's just something that happens. There's a win and a lose. Those are just the first two that I always avoid. Nicole, what are some other ones that you avoid?
Yeah, academically, like a poor grade, and
Hmm.
then the obstacle, like the challenge would be I really studied and now I overcame my failure, my challenge. No.
Hmm.
Um, someone else's failure, like we don't need to have a secondhand experience and be empathetic for them. This needs to be about you, something
Hmm.
that was recent.
Yeah.
And I want to clarify by non-high school, it doesn't need that doesn't mean it needs to be something that happened in school, just something
Yes.
that happened within those years of high school. It should not be something that happened as a child.
Correct.
Um, and then something that's not a real failure. Like, oh, I lost an earring that was like really sentimental to me. Like, that's not a failure. That's something that just happened. Um, or, this didn't go my way. That's not really a failure. So really be reflective of things that are, we'll talk about like some of those, how to pick the right topic.
Hmm.
Um, so how about structure?
Mm. I always tell students, maybe obviously share the failure so we understand what you're talking about. But the point is what you learn from it. Every single school, it looks like everything that we've said, the personal statement and the two questions we mentioned earlier. It's how did you grow from this experience? What did you learn from this experience? Too much time on the failure. The point is to reflect on what actually happened.
Yes, we need to explain it a little bit, obviously, to give the reader some context, but we are not going to keep harping on what the failure was and why it happened. And I also never want you to start getting into like the defending yourself
Mhm.
situation and as to why it happened. I think that's the immediate, I think some kids just naturally go that direction of like, well, it wasn't
Yeah.
really my fault. Like, no, no, no. Let's talk about what you learned. This happened, short description, give them the
Mhm.
context, and then what did you learn? If we're talking about this essay, I always like to go backwards. I feel like I say this in every podcast about an essay. Why are they asking you this?
Mhm.
Do they care about the actual failure? Likely no.
Right.
Likely no, they don't. What they care about that you are a mature intellectual individual that is going to succeed in post-secondary education, specifically at their school.
Yeah.
They don't care what the actual, it sounds harsh, they don't care what the actual failure is. Every student is going to have something that happened, something that they made a mistake on. didn't go the exact way they want it to. That's natural. That's life. That's normal.
Yeah.
The important thing is that you have the ability to reflect, understand, maybe that wasn't my best move. And what did I learn from this? How am I going to face a similar situation in the future with a different perspective?
Yeah.
That's what they care about.
Yeah.
So we're not going to sit here and harp on what it was.
Hmm.
Small description, get into what you learned and how that's like shaped who you are now,
Yeah.
and your perspective of things.
Yeah.
So, and they're not judging you, on how big of a failure it is. Now certain things maybe a little bit like, was that really a failure? I think
Yeah.
this piece is very self-reflective. I think they're also judging the like your ability to be reflective
Yeah.
and self-reflect. Um, what else? We don't want to try to make the challenge or failure seem like a bigger deal than it already is. And like we don't want to make it sound insincere. We don't want to seem like we're reaching or like wanting approval. You made a really great point before we started talking, about being in touch, right? What were you remind me of that whole point?
Yeah, so just kind of being aware of how your tone is with this failure. So I use the quote out of touch. If something that's like, oh, I don't I see where you're coming from, but from an admissions officer standpoint, if you seem like was there a lot of like reflection on your tone of this? Just kind of being aware of the privileges within the problem. So going back to that earring kind of sentimental thing, we can absolutely understand that. We just don't want it to be flagged up like, oh, she said it was a Kendra Scott ring or earring. Those are so expensive. So just kind of being aware of your tone and not sounding too out of touch or maybe out of like just not aware of how you're explaining the failure.
Yeah. And like kind of being aware of like privilege as well. Like you
Yeah.
said, oh, like I lost my really expensive purse or watch or something. Like I cracked the face of my really expensive watch. Like that's not really a failure, Um, um just being in touch, like you said, with what you're saying, thinking about perspective, thinking about how you're going to be perceived, thinking about privilege, like kind of those things as well.
Yeah.
Now, if you want, like, kind of, okay, so how this is your only thing, right? Let's say I'm going to make this up. You cracked the face of a really expensive watch that you were given, and it was like a family, thing. And, you're really upset about it. You were disappointed in yourself. So maybe we're not focusing on the fact that the watch was, $10,000 and it was,
Mhm.
maybe we're focused on the fact that you need to slow down, um, have a little bit more responsibility with items or pay attention to where you put things and not be careless, and like maybe that was the lesson versus we're focusing on the expense of this thing, right? I
Right.
think a lesson that a lot of high schoolers learn is like slowing down and taking responsibility for like minor actions, and how you learn that a small thing of like, oh, I just chucked, I dropped my backpack on the ground when I came in instead of nicely placing it on the hook, then the
Mhm.
watch shattered. The lesson is taking time to slow down, having respect for items, and like, we don't need to focus on the fact that it was an expensive thing, right?
Mhm.
Like just focusing on the tone.
Yes.
So another thing, we don't want to turn it around and say, well, my weaknesses are who makes me me. My weaknesses are my strengths. Like that's not what they're asking.
Mhm.
They want you to know something that you need to work on. You're not perfect. No one is. Be reflective, come up with an actual weakness versus saying something like that.
Mhm.
And some schools do ask straight up for your weaknesses, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's Penn State that literally says weaknesses. So of course they
Yeah.
say Describe what you think your strongest qualities are, as well as weaknesses that you would like to improve upon. So they want imperfect people. And Pitt kind of does this as well. How do you hope that University of Pittsburgh education will enable you to improve on your worst personality traits and enhance your best traits in order to make you a good physician? So, especially these BSMD schools, they are not afraid to straight up ask you what you want to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I know, did you say the UPIT one as well?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So like specifically also when you're getting into your major, what can you enhance or work on that's going to help you be successful in this major as well?
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things to avoid in general?
If I see perfectionism, I'm going to tell you to rewrite it. Just talking about being a perfectionist,
Yeah.
schools, I'm sure they've heard it a thousand times. They are unaware that or they are aware that perfectionism does not exist, and they do not want that in their students. We would probably say also time management and procrastination, even though that is pretty common and is a thing, we just don't want that to be flagged as anything of like, oh, if you're telling us this now, ooh, unless you can back it up with how the school can help you, but in terms of like the weakness itself, just kind of being wary of how you tread with time management and procrastination. Um, Anything else, Nicole?
Yeah. Getting caught cheating on a test, getting caught lying, um, being lazy, right? Like, oh, I was super lazy with my homework assignments freshman year, and then I turned it around,
Yeah.
anything that's going to share a bad personal quality of yours,
Mhm.
maybe some anger issues, maybe like a lack of empathy or a lack of awareness. Then I think a lot of kids also like to talk about imposter syndrome, which again, kind of getting to that perfectionist thing. We don't, that's pretty common. It's
Yeah,
not really a true good topic for this.
right.
I think instead, um, talk about the specific steps you've taken to address the weakness. And again, very, very specific. We say this in every single podcast episode with the essays, as specific as possible. So,
Yeah.
we don't want to say, I worked really hard to overcome this. Well, what did you do to work really
Hmm.
hard? What steps did you take? And then was it trial and error? Maybe the first thing you tried didn't work. And like that's going to continue on the path of how they know that you've overcome this.
Hmm.
Um, Take this opportunity as, to just talk about how you intend on continuing to work through this, right?
Yeah.
There's not always a perfect solution when you go off. Yeah, maybe you've nailed it now and you have it down pat, but you're still in high school, you're still living at home, you're still in the same routine. But next year, when you go off to college, how are you going to adapt and continue to, work through this?
Hmm.
So, what are some good examples?
Yeah, so one that I do think is good, and obviously this will be very reflective if you show them your activities list, is overcommitment or maybe trouble saying no. Obviously, it can show that you are eager, but maybe just kind of explaining what that means. And sometimes with some of these examples, or the ones that we're about to share, I always tell students, like, tell me what the weakness is and then go research something very specific at the school that could maybe help you with that. So maybe overcommitment or trouble saying no. See if there's any interpersonal workshops at the academic center. Just seeing ways that you can maybe improve on these, especially if the schools are asking you. Any other examples, Nicole?
Yeah, maybe avoiding conflict, or,
Mm.
I was trying to keep the peace and I was trying to not maybe stand up for myself, or um I kind of always went with the flow of things to avoid, just shaking the boat or rocking the boat or just really standing out. And then I'm realizing like maybe I don't want to do these things. Maybe it didn't lead to the best choices that I was making. So I was going along with what friends were doing. And, now I'm advocating for myself and learning who I am and what my choices are. Um, that's one. I have a student right now who is kind of talking about kind of just always doing, what they're siblings had done and just kind of following and following and following because they're the youngest. And, now they're in the last year or so understanding and kind of getting their own footing of maybe
Hmm.
that's not what I want to do. And is it really a challenge? Is it really an issue? It could be.
Yeah.
It could turn into one if you're just being a follower and they're recognizing, they're self reflecting and saying, why? And it was the example they use is like, well, why am I ordering this when we go out here every Friday for pizza? Like, I don't even really like this. I just do it
Mhm.
because everyone else does it. And it's like, is that a great thing to do all the time? No, I shouldn't
Right.
always follow. And I should kind of learn to have my own footing and learn to have my own ground on things. But I just kind of go with it. So stuff like that, I think can be good with the right examples and then with the right, like you said, using it in to look forward, looking ahead as well. How will you continue to take these mini actions as you go forward?
Hmm.
Um, you know, I think finding your own, you know, not reaching like reaching out for help or learning how to ask for help or not overcommitting, different than time management, you know,
Yeah,
um, but kind of like finding yourself specifically and finding what works for you specifically is a good thing to showcase.
yeah,
And then I really love what you said about being out of touch. Like really, really check your tone, check your language, check how it's coming across before you're submitting anything.
yes,
Um, and then thinking about like, is this really an issue or is this just like a personal thing that's not reflective? Think about how am I going to be received as my reflection piece instead of just the actual issue.
for sure. Something that I have done is I've always told students, like, obviously come to me, but maybe have someone else read the issue. Don't tell them, like, don't give them context or anything, or just let them read it and maybe just get like an outside perspective. I've had students where I've said, hey, maybe we should change the tone here. Are you aware of this and this and this? And sometimes students aren't even aware that they are kind of sounding out of touch. They're like, well, I'm just explaining this experience. So maybe just having somebody else kind of read it and then just kind of going from there on how you're sharing certain things. Yeah, outside perspective can be helpful.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to just the topic. I mean, we
Yes.
usually say too many people reading your essays is not always great because everyone's going to have a different perspective. But talking about the topic and asking parents or friends about the
Yes.
topic choice, I think is a really great thing. Especially, parents have that perspective. They're older, known you your whole life. They are going to be able to even help you come up with something if you can't come up with something either.
Right.
And they'll say, remember in 10th grade when you were really struggling with this? Like sometimes students don't, your brain has a way of kind of like protecting you and forgetting about things that you weren't that great
Yeah.
at. Or maybe having a perception in your head a little bit differently. So parents can sometimes, um, I'm going to say humble you a little bit and
Yes.
remind you of the things that you needed some work on.
Yes.
Awesome. But this is a great one. It can be a really great essay when done correctly. So absolutely brainstorm it out. This is not one that you should just kind of go into blindly. Really think about topics. Some things, sometimes I like to have students like, okay, if this is the specific topic, let's do a small outline. Like, do we really have a lot to say about it? Or let's try a different topic, small outline, really to try to grasp what you'd say before you just go into it blindly and keep writing.
Hmm.
And then the cool thing about this one is typically it's not school specific. So if you write a really great one, you may be able to use the idea elsewhere.
Hmm.
If you have a really great reflective piece, you could typically, there may be other places where you could use it in other instances. So try hard on it, really work hard on it, and then kind of keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so. Again, colleges do not want perfect students, hence why we never tell students to write about perfectionism. They do want to see your self awareness, they want to see your social awareness. They just want to see more than just the accomplishments, they want to see who you are as a person. And those are always like, the absolute best. I'm great, I'm this and that, which is always great. But just taking time to self reflect and see or improve to college is that you can grow, you have grown, and yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for listening. Continue to like and subscribe so that way you hear the rest of our mini series and the rest of our information as the cycle continues. But thanks for listening.